Hey everyone, Justin here. I just finished up my other work for today, so I thought I'd hop onto Parchment to practice some poetry. Ooh, haven't tried this app yet. MySpace. That's two separate words if there are any lawyers watching. So far, all these apps have had really specific rules and requirements around rhyme and meter and syllables, so I wonder what challenging new guidelines we'll have to follow this time. Welcome to MySpace, where you're free to share free verse. Cute. That's it? Just a blank page? Let me tap this question mark for help. Can you write compelling poetry with no structural rules to guide you? Wait, so there's just no rules? Wow. We're finally free to write any poetry we want? No problem. I'll just, Huh. That much freedom is actually a little overwhelming. Where do I start? To figure this out, we'll explore the artistic flexibility that characterizes free verse poetry. We'll also check out some mentor texts to see how they use language and formatting. Then we should be ready to write our own free verse and explain our ideas. Let's get into it. So this app, MySpace, is all about writing free verse, which is poetry that doesn't follow a regular meter or rhyme scheme. That means no required length, syllable count, or rhymes. And since it's poetry, we don't even have to follow standard rules around spelling, grammar, or punctuation. Think of free verse as a way to explore and use language artistically. But free doesn't mean random. Free verse poets still make thoughtful, deliberate choices to express themselves. So, what kinds of choices can we make in free verse? And what effect do they have? To find out, let's check out a mentor text, Sea Poppies by the poet H.D., in which she describes flowers growing by the ocean. In your guided notes, pause to read and then reflect. Without specific structural rules to guide her, what kinds of choices did this poet make while writing? Consider the words she uses and how she arranges them on the page. Of course, HD chose her language carefully, picking words to convey a beautiful scene and serene mood. She used some poetic devices like imagery, alliteration, personification, and repetition. She also chose not to use rhyme or meter, which makes her poems sound more like natural speech than, say, a Shakespearean sonnet. But beyond just her words, HD also made choices in formatting, or how the text appears on the page. Specifically, she used line breaks, stanza breaks, enjambment, and white space to convey her poetic vision. Let's explore what those terms mean by examining how they're used in this poem. HD chose where to create line breaks, or the space where one line of poetry ends and another begins. She also decided where to use stanza breaks, the space between two stanzas of poetry. These formatting choices can create pauses or draw our attention to certain words. Line breaks and stanza breaks can also create enjambment, or the continuation of a sentence from one line to the next without any punctuation at the line break. This poem has a lot of enjambed lines. Notice how all these line breaks are in the middle of a sentence and don't have periods, commas, or any other punctuation at the end. That can affect the poem's pacing, or even create a sense of surprise when a sentence doesn't end the way we were expecting. And line breaks and stanza breaks will also affect the poem's white space, which refers to the space around the poem, including the space between the lines and the margins. White space plays with the visual aspect of poetry, changing the mood of the poem. Formatting choices can have a huge impact on how we read a poem. To see that in action, let's compare two versions of this poem. Here's the original text of Sea Poppies, and here's a modified version with all of the poet's formatting choices removed. Take a moment to read both versions and compare them. How does the different formatting affect the way you read each version? Now, our answers will all be a little different here because we all interpret art in our own way. But for many readers, formatting affects pacing, emphasis, and mood. For me, the line breaks and stanza breaks create a slow pace with pauses. And enjambment keeps a steady flow through the line breaks, so it doesn't feel too disjointed. The frequent line breaks really emphasize each little piece of imagery. And enjambment emphasizes the repeated words like shells and leaf, and also imagery like treasure and other positive descriptive words by placing those words at the ends of lines or on their own lines. The pacing and emphasis contribute to a calm mood, and having a lot of white space adds to that peacefulness, like it's a place for me to take my own deep, calm breath before moving on. Now, maybe you're thinking, no, Justin, the formatting creates a fast pace and a chaotic mood. And that's the beauty of art. We can both be right. As long as you can explain your ideas, you're correct, even if you disagree with my obviously very insightful and wise and amazing opinions. Okay, so we've got an idea of what formatting choices we can make in free verse poems and the kinds of effects they have. Now let's practice using them ourselves. To help us make our own formatting choices in free verse poems, let's experiment with the formatting in a mentor text. First, let's read this poem together in its original form. In the Station of the Metro by Ezra Pound. The apparition of these faces in the crowd. Petals on a wet black bough. In this brief poem, Pound describes a crowd of people in a metro station by comparing their faces against the dark background to flower petals on a tree branch. It's short, but powerful. Pound uses a metaphor, some imagery, and alliteration. Unlike Sea Poppies, this free verse poem does use near rhyme in crowd and bow. And while it's not a strict meter, there's definitely a cadence or rhythm to the words. His formatting choices are pretty simple, just one line break. No stanza breaks, no enjambment, not a lot of white space. So, what if this poem used different formatting choices? How might that affect its pace, emphasize different words, or set a new mood? Let's experiment. In your guided notes, rewrite this poem. Use the same words as the original, but make different formatting choices. You might add line or stanza breaks, create enjambment, play with white space, get as creative as you want. Pause to work for a while. The options here are almost infinite. Maybe you used line breaks and enjambment to emphasize the connection between faces and petals, or a stanza break and white space to create a suspenseful mood, and even make that last line look a little like a tree branch. And we only played with a few options. Free verse is truly free, so poets can experiment with punctuation, curved lines, or colored words, even different fonts. Oh, Comic Sans, really? A free verse is all about freely expressing yourself. But remember, with great poetic freedom comes great poetic responsibility. Our choices should be thoughtful and purposeful. Okay, I feel like I'm ready to make some choices in my own free verse poetry. All right, it was a little outside of my comfort zone, but I wrote a free verse poem and shared it on MySpace. And it's... Oh, that's nice. I think. Getting a lot of comments. Very free-form comments. In the rest of the lesson activities, it'll be your turn to express yourself in free verse. This beta trial of Parchment is almost over, and I hear some users are getting invited to try the exclusive Portfolio app. Maybe we'll learn more next time. Until then, keep writing. Your story is worth telling. See you next time.